invite you to come and find a seat. Welcome to St. Luke's Lutheran Church. My name is Mike Hughes. I'm pastor here at St. Luke's. We are pleased to host this mayoral forum. Welcome candidates and members of the community. We are pleased to have you here and to have this opportunity for conversation, an important conversation about our community. Thank you for coming here tonight for that conversation. At this time, I would like Nell, President of LACNIP, to come forward. Nell Lester, thank you for choosing St. Luke's as a site for this tonight.
On behalf of Lima Allen County Neighborhoods in Partnership, we would like to thank the pastor of St. Luke's. We would like to welcome the candidates. We also would like to thank John, Bob, Kathy, and Penny, members of LACNIP, for help putting this on. We also would like to thank our moderator, Dr. Matthew J. McKinley. Thank you all.
Good evening. Welcome to what I'll call is a biannual or annual event, LACNIP's approach to ensuring that the community is educated about the opportunities for candidates in the selection this evening. So I'm happy to share that we have with us tonight Dave Berger and Doug Vermillion, both who are vying for the mayor of the city of Lima. Also like to thank St. Luke's Lutheran Church for sponsoring being our host this evening, as well as Kathy Metzger for taking care of the refreshments. And I wanted to note that I want to make sure I have this date right, October 23rd, the Lima Allen County Chamber will be having a second mayoral debate being held at the Civic Center at 5:30 p.m. And it's sponsored by Superior Federal Credit Union. So we look forward to this opportunity tonight, and as you have further questions, I'm sure you'll have the opportunity to come back and visit with the candidates that evening. Tonight, as we've indicated, this is a forum. It's an opportunity for questions to have previously been given to me by you all in the audience, which I will share with the candidates. See if I can get that up a little bit better. Thank you. Yeah, and if we have some others, if you can hand them to John Schneider, he can walk them up to me. So if John, you can raise your hand so that everybody can see you. There's some others with some questions here. We're anticipating that the event will go from approximately 7 to 8:30. Could finish a little early, could finish a little later, depending on the questions and the opportunities for the candidates. Candidates are asked to refrain from interrupting each other, as well as asking the same of the audience. That is to please hold any positive or negative responses to the candidates to a nil. Our process today will be that we will open with a 2-minute statement from each candidate. We will then rotate questions to each candidate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer, and then a 1-minute rebuttal should they choose to use that time. We're blessed to have timekeeper today, Terry Salone from the Lima Allen County Chamber, and we appreciate your assistance. Gentlemen, if you see her in the front, she will give you a little bit of a sign if you have a need for that timekeeping. This evening, we took out that special 25-cent piece and flipped it and the mayor had the honor of choosing whether he would open the debate or speak second. And at this time, he is deferred to Mr. Vermillion, Doug. And so with that, Doug, you have 2 minutes to provide a kind of an opening statement for which, for our group tonight.
For those of you that don't know who I am, I'm Doug Vermillion, and I would like to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out to attend this forum. Many of you know me, and for the ones that do not, you need to know that I'm not a politician. I am, however, a public servant who worked for the city of Lima for over 30 years. I am a man of few words, but these words are to the point. Make decisions after gathering complete information and correct information. I then apply common sense and sound business practices to my decision process. My decisions will represent the needs of the entire city and will target a win-win outcome. I am not one to provide an answer unless I know that it is the entire truth, and I do not just provide lip service. I do not shy away from challenges or expect others to perform tasks that I am not willing to take on myself. I believe Lima has been on a steady state of decline long enough, so I am stepping up to do everything I can to improve my hometown. I will address questions regarding any problem areas and answer with what my goals are for those areas. However, I may not have the specific details and mechanics on how these solutions will be accomplished, and I will not give you guarantees until I have had all the information necessary to make sure that I can follow through. There are laws, rules, and regulations that must be followed, and there are other individuals and entities with whom we need to collaborate to reach most decisions. I will present my case on why and how to attain these goals to gain cooperation from these others. If you have seen my website, you will know that my main focus will be on attracting new business and expanding our current businesses, maintaining quality utilities that are affordable, assuring our transportation infrastructure offers ease of travel for citizens and future business development, and enhancing public safety so everyone has peace of mind. I believe these are the areas we need to immediately address in order to bring Lima back to the prosperous, thriving city it once was.
Well, good evening. I'm Dave Berger, and I've been privileged to serve as the mayor of the city of Lima since December 1989. 24 years in which I have had the opportunity to work with a broad cross-section of our community, working on plans and executing those plans to deal with the many challenges that we have faced. I've appreciated that opportunity because it's given me an enormous sense of the ability of our community to frankly take on the most serious of problems, whether it's been financial, whether it's been the economic development challenges, or the kinds of crime challenges that have occurred in our community as well. If you look back over the last 4 years in particular, we have had an unprecedented number of capital construction projects in our community. Frankly, the highest level of capital spending we've ever had in our history. In the last 4 years, crime in our community has dropped over 20%. It's a terrific rebound from the points of the late 90s when drugs and crime, frankly, was endemic. We've also had real success when it comes to economic development. When you look at the state of industry in our community, all are expanding, all are hiring, and we have emerged from the longest period of economic stress since the Great Depression. And our economic circumstances, frankly, are stable and improving. So it's in that context that I'm looking forward to offering my services once again to our community to provide leadership and management skills that I believe will continue to grow our community in all ways and in all neighborhoods. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight.
Thank you, Doug and Dave, for those opening remarks. We now will progress to the question component of tonight's forum. And with that, Dave, you will actually have the first question this evening, and the opportunity, Doug, will follow. As we are with the Lima Hood Neighborhood Association, I think it's appropriate that we start the questioning out with a very simple question. What is the appropriate role for neighborhood associations within the city of Lima and in terms of supporting the city itself?
Well, I have believed in the power of neighborhoods forever. In fact, in my previous job with Rehab Project, I helped to organize neighborhood associations throughout the community. And once I was elected, it was my administration that developed a Department of Community Development and focused on then creating the neighborhood associations that now exist, and frankly, through the help of then City Councilor Shirley Daly, worked with the city and with neighborhood groups to form LACNIP. It's a powerful engine for positive change in our community. Neighborhood groups throughout our community make a difference every day in the lives of people, and it's that kind of energy that we need to continue to develop, continue to tap in order to bring about the ongoing change that's necessary to keep our neighborhoods safe, keep them growing, and overall create a quality of life that's positive for our entire community.
Thank you, Dave. Doug?
The neighborhoods are where all our grassroots ideas come from. Without the neighborhoods bringing in their ideas, we have nothing. Well, I won't say we have nothing. We have very little to start developing with. Actually, we are here to serve the citizens, and the citizens are in our neighborhoods, so that's where we need to start.
Okay, with that, we have the opportunity for a rebuttal. If there is not one, then we are able to move on.
Well, I would just add that I think that the overall development of LACNIP has been demonstrated recently by the willingness of the organization and all the member neighborhoods to, in fact, take on the challenge of a resource center. And that resource center now is available not only to the neighborhoods but to the community as a whole to continue to provide training opportunities, to continue to provide resources like tools and a place for gathering and meeting and ultimately solving the problems that confront the neighborhoods throughout the community.
Doug? Anything else? We'll progress to the second question, and this will be for Doug initially and then Dave. In the continuation of the thought of volunteerism, can you speak to groups or membership or organizations for which you belong and or that you believe the city of Lima can engage more fully to support the mission of the city of Lima?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, how about if I just talk out loud? If I understand your question correctly, you're wanting to know my service organizations that I belong to and some of the programs that I've been involved in. I'm part of the Chiefs of Police Association. We have the kids and cops for the Christmas time. I'm also a member of the Eagles. I just participated in an old-timers walk. There are several other things that I have participated in, but honestly, they're not coming to mind right now.
And then the second part of that would be, are there organizations that you believe and maybe potentially how you would engage those organizations to support the goals that you have for the city of Lima?
Well, what I'd like to do is have the different service organizations basically, for lack of a better term, put together a little competition so they can compete with one another and maybe get the accolades and get their message out and maybe promote their organization as well as their memberships.
Okay. David?
Well, I've been a member of a number of the neighborhood associations over the years. Beyond local organizations and service clubs like the Optimist Club, I'm also a member of the board of the Ohio Municipal League and the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and in those capacities have worked continuously on the policy issues confronting our community and communities throughout the state and the nation. In that, those are engagements that frankly have wide importance, both in terms of the resources that we have, but also the challenges in the form of unfunded mandates that we've been dealing with. Those are organizations that I believe bring value to our community in terms of the kinds of policies that are taken up both in Columbus and in Washington, and they're organizations that I believe get things done on behalf of communities large and small throughout the country.
Thank you. No? No? Dave, anything else that you'd like to say? Okay, on that topic. Now to move into a little bit of a, I'll use the word visionary or anticipation of what the future holds. As you look at the city of Lima, and Dave, this will be directed at you first, what is the most significant single issue Lima faces in the next 5 years, and how will you address this as mayor?
I think that long term, we continue to be challenged in Ohio with economic challenges. And that, of course, means we need to do more to stimulate our economy and to grow local businesses and attract businesses here. Our economic development efforts are led locally by the Allen Economic Development Group, and I'm on the board of that organization and work daily with that staff and with the other stakeholders that are a part of the organization to market our community, to create the places, the industrial parks, and the other locations where business can locate. In addition to those traditional economic development efforts, however, I'm also a founding member of what's called the Ohio Energy and Advanced Manufacturing Center, which is a focus on creating with our local businesses the opportunity for research and development, meaning bringing to local businesses the resources of the state's Third Frontier program and other public resources that can bring about the state-of-the-art technology that each of those manufacturing businesses have, and ultimately the jobs that become a result of that. So in my view, the most serious challenge we have is creating jobs, good-paying jobs, creating a workforce that in fact can match those jobs, and ultimately with that economy, creating a quality of life in our community that attracts our kids back home after school and creates a quality of life in our neighborhoods that we would all appreciate.
Doug, we're going to try this one.
Well, obviously, developing, bringing in and expanding our industries and using our natural resources that we have at hand to bring these industries to us, to create jobs and expand our current jobs is number one in priority. Number two, we have some of the best educational facilities in the area. But we educate our students and then we send them off somewhere else, whether they go back home or they go to a different area. Without the jobs here, they're not going to remain here. And I don't blame them for going to wherever the employment is. We need to keep these folks here, at least the cream of the crop, and use our resources as a, for lack of a better term, a carrot on a stick to attract our businesses.
Dave, do you have a follow-up? We'll proceed to the next set of questions, and Doug will respond first. What specific actions will you take to support the development of downtown Lima? To
develop downtown Lima, Well, we definitely need to keep the infrastructure, major development as far as major businesses, whether it be via truck or delivery vans or anything of that nature. We need to definitely make it attractive visually and cosmetically. If we can bring people down here to our businesses, the retail shops will work, and people that are in manufacturing, they also enjoy the cosmetics of the outside of their business as well as the inside of their businesses.
Okay. Dave?
There are a number of things that are underway in the downtown, and I think we're seeing the exciting results of what's underway. First of all, the city renewed the streetscape last year, and as a result of that, the investment that was made 30 years ago continues to have a life that is attractive and also safe. Secondly, we are now pursuing a set of changes to one-way streets in our community. We will see major street reconstruction on Elizabeth and West next year, and 2 years later on Union and Central. We also expect to see additional improvements on Wayne Street and High in the following years. Thirdly, we are working in concert with Rhodes State College. They announced plans several months ago to locate in the downtown their medically related curriculum. And we're working very closely with them on that opportunity and believe that it holds a very unique opportunity for our community. It would represent an investment in a facility that daily would bring 1,000 people to the downtown. And do so in a way that, much like the YMCA and its presence in the downtown, works through night and day, across all seasons, and ultimately creates an environment in the downtown that is busy and that has traffic and that ultimately creates additional kinds of niche businesses that can thrive, like the restaurants that we're now seeing start up in our downtown. So there is much that can be done and much that we are doing.
Doug? There was no rebuttal, Dave, so did you have any other comments? In the recent news, Lima news, and in the media, we have seen information regarding the Lima Civil Service Board and current happenings in relationship to the qualification list. And the question at hand, obviously you can address those general pieces, but the question at hand is, what solutions what is your solution to the present stalling tactics of the Lima City Civil Service Board? And that is actually would be your Dave.
Well, first of all, I reject the characterization of a stalling tactic by the Civil Service Board. The civil service process is changing, and that's the result of charter changes that were made by the voters over the last couple of years. Part of the process of trying to now put in place the very specific rules and practices associated with those larger rule changes necessarily requires lots of conversation, and sometimes there's going to be misunderstandings. The recent controversy that took place around the firefighter list, I'm sure, is what prompts the question. But the bottom line is, in that circumstance, we had a new testing method. That testing method actually tested for things that had never been considered before. And I'll just ask the question, how many of you believe that firefighters should be able to read, and read well? I think the general reaction when I ask others whether that's the case is that yes, they should. Well, that was one thing that was measured in this test that was never measured before. And the reason it's so important to have firefighters who can read is because we're intent upon now training them to be paramedics, because our ambulances are now running for 911 calls. So the whole circumstance of this is complex. It's not been communicated well in the media. You can't get this in a 30-second soundbite. That doesn't mean that the Civil Service Board is stalling. It means we have to work our way through all of these issues and come to real common sense solutions that ultimately create a fair testing and hiring process for the city. And that's, I believe, what we're committed to doing.
Doug?
I'll be honest with you, I'm not completely apprised of what's going on as far as the civil service and the firefighter issue is, but my understanding of the Civil Service Board is they are the ones that are supposed to administer the test. They create a list, they send it to the city does their interviews and does the hiring. From my understanding, it was a new testing, and after the Civil Service Board administered the test, the City of Lima officials reevaluated the test and came up with a different list. I believe both entities should be on the same page before they ever administer a test. Too many of our young people are not going for these tests just because of these tactics, and I use that word tactics because they both need to be on the same page prior to the test. In my own instance, I had the opportunity to try to go back to work for the city after I retired. When I was interviewed by the Civil Service Board, I was actually interviewed by a member of Dave's re-election committee. When I went in for the interview with the city themselves, they were more interested in whether I was going to continue with this campaign as far as the mayor's position. And as I informed them, when the people that signed my petition, I made a promise to them that I would give them 4 years of my life, and that's how it turned out.
1 minute for rebuttal, Dave?
Well, I'm more confused now than I was when I heard that Doug was going to take the civil service test, because it really doesn't make any sense for a candidate for mayor who has recently retired from the city after a full career to declare his candidacy and then reapply for a civil service job with the city. It makes no sense. And his explanation just now didn't add any clarity to that.
Doug, 1 minute.
I don't really believe I need to make anything clear to Dave right now. I did what I did because I felt that I needed to do it and what was best for myself as well as the people of the city of Lima.
All right. I have to backtrack here a second. I always, at least one time during these forums, to get lost in my own process. I need to ask who led off on that last question.
I believe Dave did.
Dave did. Thank you. So Doug, this will be yours to start with. In light of the $188 million contract for General Dynamics to upgrade tanks for Saudi Arabia, it was in the Lima News around September 20th. How would you proceed to help the tank plant after this contract is over? The tank plant has been threatened with closure in the past. How would you help to keep it open?
Well, obviously, I'm going to make contact with people with the federal government to encourage them to proceed with more contracts that would come back to our General Dynamics. Obviously, the infrastructure that we would need, because I believe we supply water and sewage treatment to them, I would make sure that that infrastructure is in place to handle if they needed to expand and make sure that they have the quality and quantity that they need to do their job.
Dave?
I chair the what's called Task Force Lima, which stands for Linked in Mutual Assistance. And that task force has been created and actually recreated now twice in order to respond to the various threats and opportunities facing the JSMC. Currently, we are working on a strategy to bring all possible decision makers, both in the Congress and at the Pentagon here to the JSMC, because seeing is believing. It's one thing to go into the congressman's office, it's another to have them here to actually see the scale, the sophistication of the equipment, and ultimately have an understanding about what it is that's done here on such an impressive scale. In addition to that, we have a strategy for reaching out to the congressional representatives in their districts. So on Friday, I and 3 others will be traveling to Paynesville to visit with Congressman Joyce from the 14th District. That will be a meeting not only with our task force members and the congressman, but also with a supplier from that district. We're basically wanting to make the point to all of the congressional representatives that they have a stake in the future of the JSMC. That stake is that businesses in their districts actually are suppliers to this facility, and therefore voters as well as jobs are reliant on whether or not the JSMC remains in business. So we have a strategy, we're executing that strategy, and I believe that we're actually making great progress in being able to keep the JSMC operating.
Thank you. Doug? Mayor, Dave, anything you would follow up with? This question will be yours then, Dave. One of our attendees tonight frames the question this way: as a resident of Lima, violent crime is an issue no matter where you live in the city. Explain the proposals you have to work on this situation, and second to that, how would you engage the county and the townships to assist as well? Well, first of all, we have had an incredible change in Lima and Allen County with the election of Sheriff Sam Krish. His election set a new day for relationships between the Sheriff's Office and the Lima Police Department. And that has had real results on our streets and in our neighborhoods. From 2008 through 2012, we have seen a 20% decline in UCR reported Part 1 crimes. That's all the serious crimes that are reported to the FBI. We went from 4,800 incidents in 2008 to 3,800 in 2012. And this year, from January 1st through August 31, we've seen another 10% decline. It's a huge, dramatic, and positive development in our community. It's the result of law enforcement working together in order to make that happen. It's the result of creative approaches which law enforcement has taken, everything from the outreach for prescription drug abuse events where they're gathering that, to the kinds of pinpoint policing that's occurring in partnership with our neighborhoods. Lima Police Department and the Sheriff's Office and the other remaining 13 law enforcement agencies in the county, I believe, are working together well. We need to continue to encourage them, and we need to continue to create positive partnerships between our neighborhoods and those law enforcement agencies. Doug?
I'll agree with the cooperation and collaboration with the different departments. That's what's needed. Criminals don't stay in one area, whether it's inside the city limits or inside the county of Allen. They expand their territories into different counties and to different states. Dave has brought up the fact that via the numbers, the reduced crime as far as the UCR rates. I guess my question to him, if he would like to answer, is that in direct correlation with the decrease in population that we've experienced?
Dave, your rebuttal?
Actually, I don't think it has anything to do with population numbers. And if you would look at the overall trends, we're talking about not percentages, we're talking about actual incidents. And these are incidents that have been occurring over a long period of time, and these trends are valid. So I think that we often get buried in the detail. The big picture is that the crime situation in Lima and Allen County is dramatically improving, and that ought to be a headline that we should all be celebrating.
Doug?
Again, when the population decreases, the criminals also leave our area.
Next question will be for Doug. With so many cities around us suffering from financial crises, this individual would like to know more about Lima City's budget. What is our annual budget, and how would you administer it to keep our city on sound financial footing? And if we were to experience the economic downturn of the past, how would you handle cutbacks that may be necessary?
To answer the question, I'll be honest with you, I do not know what the annual budget is. I believe I've read somewhere it's in the area of $80 million. How would I handle the downturn in our economics? Obviously, it takes creative ideas. It takes a lot of talking. I would extend my hand out to anyone who has any ideas. And again, I would try to use our natural resources that we have in place to attract our businesses and keep our businesses afloat. If it takes politicking in Columbus or Washington to enhance our businesses, then I would make every effort forward to do so.
Dave?
Well, we have just come through a very, very difficult economic time in our nation. Beginning in 2008 with the collapse of Lehman Brothers and then the ongoing travails that occurred in the auto industry and the like. And communities all across the country continue to experience terrific stress. And as we've just seen in Detroit, collapse. We actually have improved our financial strength throughout the past 4 years. It's kind of an unbelievable situation, but we got started early, ahead of the financial crisis, and we began doing that by, frankly, pinching pennies, trying to find every way in which to cut costs. Because the city's general fund is largely 80% of which is human resource related, we had to come to terms with the number of employees that the city has. And one of the principal strategies that we had was to shrink the workforce. And we went from over 500 employees down to about 350. That shrinkage gave us room to be able to attend to other things. So we've been cost cutting, we've been severe in the way that we've approached the city's budget, and as a result, we have now improved our circumstance with year-end carryovers from a low of 8% to 30% as a year-end carryover. The national average is about 25%. So we're better than average. We have improved our circumstances, and as a result, no one was laid off. City services actually were at least stable or improved, and we accomplished great things at the same time in the form of the capital projects that we undertook.
Doug?
The city government, or any government, is nothing but a service-based opportunity, or that's what government does, is provide service. If you reduce your employee workforce, you're reducing services. There's no other way of putting it. The only other way that you could improve the services with the reduction in the workforce is you had a lot of people that weren't doing anything, and they should have been gone in the first place. So I don't believe that reducing our employees has gotten better as far as that goes. The other thing that I'd like to bring up is, if I can remember, the last quarter of 2011, the administration had created a crisis and basically went after the exempt employees, stating that if they didn't receive less than $30,000 in concessions, the city was basically going down the drain. They weren't given the concessions. We had almost a $4 million carryover at the end of 2011.
Dave, rebuttal?
Well, throughout this last 7 or 8 years, there's been no question that we've had to turn to city employees because that is our biggest cost center. And we have asked all employees, my staff included, and myself, to do things differently and to give up things. And so we have negotiated in good faith with our unions, and we approached also the exempt employees on doing more. And Doug's correct, there was a rejection of that, but that doesn't mean we were wrong. It means that we simply couldn't go that direction. Over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, we have negotiated in our contracts increasing co-pays and insurance cost sharing. As a result of that, we have now reduced our health, because we're self-insured, we've reduced our health care costs by $2 million a year. Those are the kinds of opportunities that we've pursued because we needed to. It was the right thing to do.
Dave, the next question will be for you, then Doug. As you look at the city of Lima, there are a number of educational opportunities in the area. You have the City of Lima schools, the University of Northwestern Ohio, Rhodes State College, OSU Lima. Talk about how you see the city supporting those entities, driving collaboration, and what impact they could have on economic development and minimizing poverty in our community.
Well, education is an absolute must for young and old. The fact is that we all have to commit ourselves to lifelong learning. We're in a globally competitive society, and the need for education is essential to any kind of long-term economic growth or individual prosperity. The city has relationships with educational institutions throughout our community. So, for example, we created with a $220,000 grant from EDA that we were awarded, we created a training program for process manufacturing. And that was done in conjunction with Apollo Career Center and Rhodes State College. And it was exceptional. It took people in at whatever level of education they had. They could have needed a GED, and it worked them through that curricula up to the point of technical courses. Beyond that, we work with UNOH recently on an auto growth summit, and early in September invited 200 companies to attend a meeting out at the high-performance facility at UNOH, and we're focusing on how do we create value in our own region among the 200 auto manufacturing industries that we have in conjunction with educational institutions. We're also focused through the Lima Auto Task Force on obtaining resources for what's called incumbent worker training, and that's being done in conjunction with Rhodes as well as the other institutions in our community. So we're very much interested in getting adults, getting teenagers focused on the value of education because it connects directly to prosperity and job creation in our community.
Doug?
I agree with Dave. Learning is a lifelong process, and we all do it whether we realize it or not. One of my chief concerns is in the newspaper, apparently the state has a grade card system, and the city schools in their academic areas were very, they didn't they didn't produce very well. And I went through Lima City Schools. I don't find that acceptable. We can be better than what we are, but we need to start at the basics. Let's go after the reading, writing, and arithmetic, and then we'll build on it from there. The higher end education is great, but if you don't have the basics when you start, you're starting behind if you ever get a chance to take advantage of it.
Dave?
The Lima City Schools is a great institution. 3 of my 4 children are graduates of Lima City Schools, and they had an absolutely terrific education. They are the largest public school district in Allen County. I believe it's nearly 4,000 students. They have the most impoverished student population. They have the most diverse. They have the most handicapped student population. They provide services to all of those children. They've got a great team. They are working as a team to make certain that the educational attainments improve. I believe we must do all that we can to support the Lima City Schools. And I believe that in fact, in the last election, the population of the city school district, in fact, demonstrated their support for the schools with the levy that was passed. And I believe we must do all that we can to continue the good news of the Lima City Schools and sharing that with one and all.
Doug, this question then will be yours to start with. Lima, whether we always understand it or not, is a hub for West Central Ohio. What role do you see Lima, how do you see Lima's role in economic development for the region as a collaborator and apologize for the interpretation here, as a collaborator or as a visionary to look beyond Lima in terms of economic development?
Me personally, I believe it's both. We're visionaries and collaborators. We need the help of everyone, whether it's inside the city limits, in the surrounding townships, in the county, and the surrounding counties. What happens in the city of Lima, it's like a stone being dropped in a pond. There's a ripple effect. It goes out not only to the townships and the county, but to the surrounding counties and in northwest Ohio. So yes, we need to take the lead. We don't need to take control of it. Just take the lead, get everyone on board, and start working toward a common goal, whether it's situated inside the city of Lima or whether it's the citizens of Lima working at whatever the industry or whatever the visionary project will be.
Dave?
We work now in many ways in collaboration with our neighbors. Probably the biggest success in that regard was played out in the newspaper just this week. The Lima Refinery Task Force was an initiative in the late 90s which brought together the many stakeholders who fought to keep the Lima Refinery open. And the city was a part of that. The city was in a leadership role in that task force. And as a result, the Lima Refinery, rather than being shut down and destroyed, was in fact sold and remains open to this day. And we've now seen over $900 million in the last half a dozen years invested in that facility, with the promise of another $300 million being spent in the next 3 to 4 years. Terrific success story about how we can collaborate with one another and accomplish great things. The same is true with the Lima Auto Task Force. At the time of the auto collapse, the task force took the lead in advocating for the auto bailout. And ultimately, we were able to communicate, even with the Lima News, about the importance for 16,500 employees who work for auto manufacturing institutions in the 8 counties of our region. We were in a leadership role on behalf of 8 counties. And similarly now with the Task Force Lima. The JSMC is not in the city. The JSMC is a relatively small water customer as opposed to the refinery. The refinery is a big water customer, so we had a direct stake. But the JSMC has a regional role, and it's one that the city is playing a leadership role with.
Doug, a rebuttal?
When a property is sold off, a business is sold off, when there is a contract in place with the previous owner, whether it be with the City of Lima or any other entity, I believe when a business purchases that business, all the contracts stay in place. If I'm not mistaken, at one time when the refinery was sold, the new owners were told that the current water contract was no longer in force. I don't believe in that, in treating our businesses that way.
Dave, a rebuttal?
Doug's correct. I canceled the contract because I had an understanding with the company about the need to renegotiate the terms. Ultimately, we did renegotiate those terms. We do have a contract. And the water contract fees that the city now generates are in excess of $5 million. $5 million that are going to the city's general fund. And as a result of that, we have not laid people off. We've been able to maintain the strength of the city and improve the city's overall financial circumstances, even in the midst and the outcome of the national recession.
Okay, Dave, the next question is for you to start with. Lima is 30% racial minorities, is made up of 30% racial minorities, but a much lower percent of the city employees actually work for the city. What can be done to increase hiring of minorities?
Well, we have been, over the years, working to, first of all, change the civil service rules to allow for a greater selection discretion. And that set of rules changes just happened. And that's part of what I described earlier as some of the complexities that we're still working our way through in terms of testing methodologies. But previously, under the rules which had been in place since the early 1940s, the city was limited to only interviewing the top 3 candidates on any test. The state norm was 10 for any given position. That's really what has now been adopted by the rule changes that the charter allows and the Civil Service Board is now putting in place. So we're expecting that as a result of that, we're going to see more candidates and be in a position to hire more minorities. The second thing that I have to just be openly frustrated about is the fact that we did have in place and had negotiated with all of our unions in good faith for a residency requirement. Residency, in my view, is an important asset for our entire community. The state legislature, including Mr. Huffman, by the way, voted to get rid of the residency rule. That sets us back. That takes away the opportunity for our community to hire its own. It basically wipes out any advantage that folks would have that are already here. I believe ultimately the taxpayers need to be served by people that live here, and that includes the mayor. The mayor is required by the charter to live in the city, and unfortunately we have a candidate who only because it's convenient for this race decided to call his parents' home his residence. I don't think that's what the charter intended. I don't think it's what was required by those who adopted that charter language.
Doug?
Well, I'll start off with, we'll go back to the firefighters test that's already in place, or list that's already in place. It's been in place for over a year now. There's been no hirings off of that list. With the irregularities, many candidates are not interested in taking the test because if it's over a year to be hired for a position, that's a little out of bounds. So as far as the first thing I would like to do is get rid of any irregularities. Let's keep all the cards on top of the table. Let's hire equally. And then beyond that, start enticing candidates, whether they're more minorities or not, to take our tests. We as a hiring entity, we want the best we can get. And the next thing that Dave brought up was the residency. When you're running a company, and again, we provide a service, but we are basically a company, we want the best possible people. We pay good wages. We want the best we can get. So as far as the residency goes, it doesn't hold water. Seriously, why shouldn't we get the best bang for the buck? Or do we want to hire the less qualified and maybe reduce their wages? I don't really understand what he's getting around to. Second thing, as far as the residency goes, if Mr. Berger goes back and he checks the charters and he checks the elections rules and regulations, I've not violated anything. He can try to put a spin on anything he wants to put a spin on. I had to move back into the city because I had family issues and I needed to take care of them, and that's what I've been doing.
Dave, rebuttal?
Well, I think that the real question is whether anybody really believes after November, should my opponent not be successful, whether he'll remain in his parents' home or whether he's going to move back home in Marion Township.
Doug, rebuttal?
I'm not exactly certain what kind of spin he's trying to put on it, but you can believe whatever you want to believe.
We will progress to the next question. Doug, this will be for you. Recently, there's been conversation about junk automobiles in the city of Lima and bad housing, houses that are dilapidated, may be in need of some action by the city of Lima. What steps do you take to address the junk automobile issue and quote-unquote bad housing in the city of Lima?
Well, obviously there are laws, rules, and regulations in place. They all have to be adhered to, whether they're local laws, whether they're state laws, or whether they're federal laws. I will investigate what steps are available to us. I'm sure Dave will bring up that the Attorney General's office had made funds available for the raising of some of the buildings, which is great. Again, when you start tearing buildings down, it costs money to do so, and you just can't wish it to be done. You have to have the funds to do it. So I would address what steps can be taken. Obviously, there's a lot of investigation that would go into that, and take the appropriate steps to get the problem rectified. As far as the junk automobiles, I believe we already have some ordinances on the books. We just have to start enforcing them.
Dave?
The issue of junk autos is actually larger than just the issue of junk autos. It involves parking and related matters. And City Council actually conducted a series of hearings throughout the spring and summer and entirely mapped out the process and through that process simplified it. So yet this fall, we expect to be hiring on a short-term basis some additional help that will in fact begin that enforcement process. One of the, I think, most effective outcomes of the conversation that took place was identifying that many of the violations, particularly the parking violations that are occurring, happen in the evening. when our staff generally has not been has not been working. So we're going to have a flex time enforcement officer who's going to work afternoons and evenings and ultimately attend to the problem. Doug references, we have been able to compete for federal and state resources the last several years, and as a result of that, we were very effective in being able to take down over 250 houses. In previous years, that number has essentially been about 30 per year. That was all that we could afford. But with the special resources available from both the Attorney General's office at the state and also from the federal government under neighborhood stabilization funding, we've been able to attack the problem very aggressively over the last 3 years, and I think made a real difference in many neighborhoods throughout the city.
Doug, rebuttal?
Not really a rebuttal, but actually I'm going to step up for Dave. These abandoned houses and these junk automobiles are private property. There are certain procedures that need to be in place so the government or the city itself is not being accused of stealing somebody's property.
Dave, a follow-up? We're drawing close to the end of our questions this evening. So it looks like we'll have one or two more and then a closing remarks. So I wanted to give the candidates the opportunity to put that in their mind as we progress. We have a mental health levy that is on the ballot for this fall, and wanted to get both candidates' opinion on that levy. And we will start with Dave. Sorry, Dave.
I was kind of wondering.
Yeah, there you go, with Dave.
Had me confused. Well, the mental health levy is, I think, it really merits our support. We have seen, I believe, out of our local mental health board, a terrifically creative approach and an aggressive approach to providing mental health services in our county and all the counties that they're a part of. So I really do urge that voters take seriously the opportunity to support this levy. And I'll give you an example. Through the Mental Health Board, there is now a very serious conversation happening with employers about how to deal with the drug abuse problem that often comes up in the hiring process. Many of our local employers have been very public with the fact that folks are failing their tests when they come to a hiring process. So the Mental Health Board, in conjunction with the Allen Economic Development Group and the Chamber of Commerce, got together and began to develop an approach that is working with Coleman Services to provide intervention for those candidates that fail those job interviews. They're in effect trying to intervene with people and ultimately give them a second chance if they want to, frankly, cure themselves of their drug habits. So to me, that's the first time I have seen the Mental Health Board engaging with the business community and with our economic development needs. And I believe that that kind of creativity merits all of our support.